Well, hello and welcome to About the Valley. This is our opening show for the new season. Of course, we took the summer off. And our guest tonight, he's not in the studio, but he is on the phone, is Geoff Diehl, who is Republican candidate for governor of the Commonwealth. And that decision will be made on Tuesday. It seems that the primary, is it always the first Tuesday in September, Geoff?
It's always 2 months before the general election Tuesday.
Oh, it's because of where the general election falls.
Right.
Right, because, the day after Labor Day, and that can be inconvenient for a lot of people. A lot of people are just, closing up their summer homes and getting back to normal, living their normal life again. And I was kind of surprised at having it the day right after a holiday. But,
it just falls on the calendar this year that way, so it'll be a low turnout is what people estimate. Although I will say that with early voting, there has been an opportunity for people last week to go in and make a vote if they were going to be away. So that might actually help keep the numbers up a little more than what might have been expected.
Yes, the early voting as well as the mail-in.
Yep, there's mail-in balloting, and then, of course, the old-fashioned absentee balloting.
Yes. I understand the mail-ins were pretty high for Republicans.
Well, that's good to hear, and we'll see if that trend continues. Obviously, that would be an indicator of the enthusiasm that I think I'm seeing across the state as I travel around running for governor, and I think we're seeing that enthusiasm nationally with what is expected to be a red wave for Congress as well.
Now, something that's probably going to help you as well is the ballot question about illegal aliens getting a license.
Yeah, that's right. So what happened was the legislature voted into law providing driver's licenses for people who were here illegally, and Governor Baker vetoed it, and they overrode his veto. And what the people may not know this, but we were able to get a ballot question referendum if we got enough signatures. We needed about 40,000 signatures. We aimed for 60,000 in case we had any of those names scratched out, and we were able to collect almost 100,000 signatures. Wow. To get that on the ballot to let people decide if they want to have driver's licenses for people here illegally or not. And just as a quick background, Harry, the other thing is it's not necessarily about the driver's licenses, but one of the big concerns people have is that it automatically enrolls those people who are here illegally to vote, and that's a real problem. But the other thing is the RMV would be the one that oversees issuing those driver's licenses, and they have a history. Over 2,000 driver's licenses were issued by the RMV last year to people who never took a test. So they're basically being sold out of an RMV office. So, it's really about integrity of our driver's licenses and also protecting our voter integrity. So, that's why it's so important for people for it to get on the ballot, which it is, and for people to be able to vote on it in November.
Yeah, I know you're accurate on that because I renewed my license in May, and they told me, well, we're going to automatically register you to vote. So I've been registered for the last, probably 50 years. So I said, I don't know.
So what has to happen is if somebody doesn't want to be registered to vote, they have to check a box on the back of the form opting out of it. But, of course, nobody really looks at all that fine print. So, the chances are more likely that somebody who is here illegally who gets that license is going to just allow themselves to be enrolled to vote at the local town. And that's a real problem, again, when it comes to trying to make sure that one person, one vote for the people who are American citizens and not who are here illegally. So the good news is that's going to be on there. And really the polling for that was very much against it. The people of Massachusetts did not want that to happen, but the legislature took the step of making it happen anyway over the will of the people. So now we have a chance to have our voice heard. And, back in 2014, I led a repeal effort of the gas tax tied to inflation, and we were able to stop Beacon Hill from tying our gas tax to go up every year automatically without a vote. And we took it to the ballot, and we won, and that was 2014. So we actually helped Charlie Baker, I think, get into office because we brought out a lot of conservative votes that I think helped him get in back then.
I remember that quite well, and just think what the gas price would be now if that had stayed on the books.
We'd be be like California or something.
Yes.
It'd be worse. I mean, it's already bad, $4 a gallon or more. So it would definitely be worse. But, that's why it's so important for us to elect people on Beacon Hill that are going to do the will of the people, or at least have common sense, but that doesn't always happen. So every now and then the people have to have their voice heard with these referendum questions. As governor, I'm going to make sure that I'm a voice against bad legislation that comes out, and see if we can make sure that we block this before it has to go to the volunteers of having to collect all those signatures.
Yeah, and you talk about California, of course, they just passed this directive that you have to have an electric car by 2036. And
I know. Basically, making it illegal, or not? Yeah, I guess it's not going to be legal to produce a gas car in that state. In Massachusetts, looks like they're on the verge of trying to make that happen here.
yeah, they want to mirror
already
the law.
trying to phase out fossil fuels by 2030. That means we have very little time to transition away and over to fully electric, and it's just not enough. There's not enough capacity in our grid really to handle the electricity needs right now. So it's these decisions are being made without any real discussion about if it's fiscally reasonable, or could people actually afford to make these transitions. Buying an electric car is not cheap. It's a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 vehicle sometimes.
But California just gave out a directive that don't charge your car between 1 and 4 or something like that.
Right. They said you've got to all switch to electric cars, but by the way, you can't charge them during certain times because we don't have enough power. I mean, that just goes to show. But, Maura Healey, who's the Democratic nominee, most likely to be the nominee for governor, she was very proud to say recently that she blocked 2 natural gas pipelines into Massachusetts. Those natural gas pipelines feed our manufacturing companies, and they feed home heating oil. So, when people start paying double the amount to fill their tanks for home heating this coming fall, they can call Maura Healey, or they should call her, and say, thanks so much for doubling my costs, because you're the one who is keeping that extra capacity from coming into our state and driving up the cost.
I'm hearing that already. I've talked to people this week that they filled their oil tank and got a bill for $900.
I know. I mean, on top of the cost of gas, on top of the cost of food right now, our state really needs to get costs under control. And by the way, the really crazy thing is our state has taken in billions of dollars in excess tax revenue, and they're not willing to give it back. They're supposed to be returning some back, but they're fighting this effort to try to return some of that money back to the taxpayers. And the minimum they could do is at least give us a tax break, maybe lift the gas tax temporarily, because commuters are getting hit so hard. So, one of the things I want to do is take some of that excess tax revenue and actually give it back to the taxpayers in a way that makes sense. I'd like to get rid of the excise tax, which has been around since the Korean War, and nobody can explain to me why we still have it on the books. But when you buy a new car, you're already paying a pretty hefty sales tax. And now what happens is you get this extra bill the next year for $600, $700, $800. The the newer the car is, the more expensive it is, the higher that excise tax is. And so what I think the state could do is take the excess revenue they have and make up to the cities and towns who keep that excise tax, give it to them, and then basically eliminate the tax over time and just phase it out so that people can upgrade to new, more fuel-efficient vehicles and not have to have that extra big, huge lump sum tax that hits them the next year after they buy that car.
Well, I tell you, they buy an electric car, they average $60,000. You're going to have one heck of a excise tax bill. And that's
what I'm saying.
lower
Again,
now, thanks to 2.5.
If you want to help middle to low income families the most, and you want them to be in more fuel efficient cars, get rid of the excise tax. It's one of the most logical ways to do that.
Yes, and that's the other thing that gets me. The state has got money rolling in in record numbers. They have a huge surplus right now.
Yeah, and on top of that, they had $5 billion that was given to them by the federal government for pandemic relief. They spent $4 billion of that in pet projects. The town of Beverly got a $200,000 pickleball court. That was with pandemic money. In my opinion, what should have happened was that $5 billion should have been dumped right into the unemployment trust fund, which was depleted $7 billion because of everybody was home from COVID. Instead, they only put $500 million into that trust fund, and they decided to bond the remaining debt for 20 years and pass that cost back on to business owners again. So business owners that were able to survive the pandemic, 40% of restaurants, for example, didn't make it through the pandemic. Then employees were given enhanced unemployment. They were staying at home longer than expected. So it was hard for businesses to get workers in. It's still hard to get workers into your business. And then if you survived all that, now they're going to assess you with new costs to refill the unemployment insurance that they could have helped refill with federal money when they got it.
Oh, it's unbelievable. You knew George Peterson.
Of course, from Grafton.
Yeah. He once said to me, I can't believe how fast they can spend money up there. And it's true.
They spent $4 billion in one night, no amendments, no debates. Everybody made a list of all their pet projects, and they spent it all on that. It was as if they just were given silly money. It was crazy. And again, businesses are still recovering. People are still trying to get back on their feet. State troopers have been fired because of the vaccine mandate. My running mate, Leah Allen, she was a nurse that got fired because she was pregnant during the pandemic. She worked on a COVID ward, and when the vaccines came out, she had her baby. She didn't want to pass the vaccine through her breast milk. She was breastfeeding. She didn't want her baby to get the vaccine through that, so she declined to take the vaccine. And by the way, I'm vaccinated. It's not anti-vaccine. It's just that it should be your medical choice. And she got fired for it. So people are really, right now, in tough situations, and the federal government and the state government are rolling in excess tax revenue, and these lawmakers are doing nothing to give back money to help people right now that are struggling.
Well, the vaccine's questionable whether it did much good at all. Plus the fact it's something altogether new. It's a new type of vaccine. So I can understand why people would be reluctant, not to take it. I got 2 shots. I'm not getting a third. I'm not getting a fourth. I think 2 is enough.
Well, look at President Biden got 4. He got the 2 and then the 2 boosters, and he still got it twice. I mean, I don't know. It seemed like he caught it from himself because he got it twice in a row, like within the same week or something. It was crazy. But, obviously people are concerned about whether the vaccines work. Some people have heart conditions that the vaccine would be bad for. Some people got natural immunity from serving on the front lines during the pandemic. So, again, my administration is going to make sure that we repeal the vaccine mandates and that we give everybody that job back on day 1 who works for the state that got fired. And on day 2, I'm going to replace anybody in the administration who thought that was a good idea with people who actually think that individuals and their freedom of healthcare choices is important.
Absolutely. Every year my doctor says, oh, you got to get a flu shot. I said, look, the last time I got the flu was 10 years ago. That was the last time I got a flu shot. When I stopped getting the flu shot, I stopped getting the flu.
That's a pretty good amount of time.
I'm in my mid-70s. I got a good record right now.
Yes. That's good. But look, again, it's just your healthcare choice. I mean, this is a state where everybody talks about my body, my choice, and yet for some reason the government said you've got to take this shot or else you're going to lose your career. These state troopers, they were discharged in a way that means that they can never work in law enforcement again. It's disgusting what happened to them. Corrections officers, firefighters in the city of Boston, people who either took early retirement or they were fired. And Massachusetts had 50,000 people leave the state last year because they either for affordability issues or because of freedom issues. They just decided to move to a state where they could have better choices. And my goal is to give people their freedom back, whether it's healthcare choices, whether it's education for their kids. I want to make sure that if these public schools are teaching kids sexually inappropriate material at kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, I want to let parents decide whether they want to send them there. So I'm going to give parents the choice using an education savings account to spend their tax money that would go towards their kids' education on either a public school or a private school or even for homeschooling, the materials they would need for that. I want to give parents much more of a flexible choice on how their kids get educated because if right now the schools in Massachusetts, they delayed coming back. They had kids in masks for a really long time. We're seeing that math and reading skills have really dropped off the table. So if public schools aren't doing it, parents have the right to have a choice, and our tax dollars should follow the kids. So that's my goal as governor, is to give parents that freedom of choice as well.
Well, competition has always been the way America worked, and that's why we build better things, because competition draws it out.
Well, the free market, right, exactly. It causes companies to compete to provide a better service or a better product at the right price because the market determines that. But government, when they are the guaranteed payer for something like health care or even free college, for example, there's no incentive for those colleges or those healthcare companies to lower the cost. They're just going to continue to increase because government will always write that check. So, it's true. Government is important to provide the key services like transportation and, make sure that federally, of course, we have the national defense. But at some point, the free market needs to be involved in making sure that things in our state, like healthcare, are driven. The cost is driven down. So we have to allow those free market principles back into play. And when government takes over more and more of our lives, like education and healthcare, housing, they could shut down our businesses. We found out during the pandemic. That just is very hard for people to want to be incentivized to try to start those new businesses and take that big risk. My wife and I invested everything we had 20 years ago when we started a small performing arts school that my wife runs right now. And we lived with my in-laws for a year and a half to be able to afford that. My wife didn't take a salary for 3 years in order to pay back our personal loan to ourselves. And now we, 20 years later, have a very strong business. Now, she runs that, and I work as a sales rep for manufacturing. But the fact of the matter is, most people who try to start a small business, put everything they have into it, and government, it's shown us now they can take it away, they can shut you down, they can tell you when to reopen, they tell you how much you have to pay your employees by wages. Government's become way too involved in the free market, and that's really hurting us, I think, overall.
Yeah, oh yes, there's no doubt about it. When government gets involved, they destroy the free market. And you want to talk about college education. Here we are funding kids to go to college. Of course, we give them a big loan, then they got to pay it back. But now we saw during the epidemic, we had a shortage of tradesmen.
I know. We're seeing it now. You still have a tough time. Anybody who owns a business, even the state workers, are having a tough time recruiting workers right now. Again, 50,000 people left Massachusetts last year alone. We're losing more people. If somebody tries to retire in Massachusetts and buy a downsized home, that home is extremely expensive because it's the same type of home that a first-time buyer wants to buy. So housing is extremely expensive. We need to, again, stop overtaxing our businesses and our citizens and allow them to have that money and flexibility to be able to get into the home or their first home or their downsized home to retire. But at the same time, we need more people who are trained into those right jobs. So vocational training right now, we have a waiting list to get into vocational schools, and those voc schools are going to produce those workers that are going to be able to help rebuild our state as we move out of the pandemic. Right,
but here again, a lot of those voc schools are sending their kids off to college.
Yeah, no, I mean that's right. And the other thing too is vocational schools. I'd like to change the way that they're funded. Right now, they're linked to the regional school district, and so what happens is the regional school district doesn't necessarily want to send a kid to a voc school because it'll take away the $10,000 roughly that the state reimburses, plus an additional $4,000 to $5,000 that the voc school charges on top of that for that vocational type of extra training. And those regional schools don't want to lose that. So sometimes I feel like there's a lack of incentive to send somebody to a voc school from a regional school who really that might be the best career path for them. So you've got kids getting sent off to four-year colleges that maybe don't really benefit from that, and maybe there should be more of those vocation options for them, especially when we're really bringing a lot of new high-tech into our state, not just biotechnology, but also robotics with these warehouses. A lot of them have robotic, robotic equipment in the warehouses. The other thing, too, is there's an effort right now to build fusion nuclear power here in Massachusetts, and there's a plant being built in Fort Devens. If we can harness fusion nuclear power, we'll have a lot more high-tech jobs and more energy transmission jobs to get that electricity out, because that'll really lower the cost of energy overall for the long haul. So again, we need to look at the future, and we need to look at our workforce and make sure that it's aligned. And I think vocational training needs to step up so that we have those workers ready to go.
You get a chance to come down to Blackstone Valley. The Blackstone Valley Chamber of Commerce had developed a place called the Ed Hub. And what they do there, they actually have former voc tech instructors, and they train high school kids as well as adults in different fields, robotics, welding, machine shop. And these are the guys that could never get the VOTEC. They also work with the Worcester County Jail with Lou Evangelitis and have trained some of his people. So that when they got out of jail, they could find a job.
Well, that's great, Harry. I mean, re-entry from prison is always important, so training them is good. And, getting people who maybe make a career change to be able to go to that Ed Hub and get that training is important. By the way, when veterans come back from military service from overseas or wherever they've been serving the country, a lot of them have training in plumbing or in electrical work or some sort of vocational trade that they've been taught by the military. And in Massachusetts, you have to go back and take classes and get certification for doing work in that field in our state. I would like, as governor, to make it so that anybody who's been trained by the military doesn't have to go through that extra cost of re-education or recertification, and that they can get a job directly into the field right away. Those veterans earn that right, and in my opinion is, why cost them extra money when they're ready to go into work right away with that career?
Yeah, that's fantastic, and because they're getting out. They got great training already.
I mean, if you can cut it in the field in the military, overseas on some base where, and you're being able to produce water or fix AC units, my gosh, I want those people working right away for me when they get back to the States. So anybody in Massachusetts who's a veteran, I want to make sure they get to work right away and decide to stay here in our state.
Yes, I agree. I mean, and we think now that there's plenty of jobs out there, but there isn't plenty of jobs out there. A lot of them are not really jobs that people want. So
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there are some high tech field jobs that we need filled, but there's also jobs, again, because of the pandemic. A lot of those visas that were given to people from foreign countries, where they would come in and work in hospitality, like restaurant or hotel.
Yes.
Those jobs aren't being filled either. So we need people at all levels, quite honestly. And especially now that kids are leaving for college again, that summer workforce is leaving. So we're going to be left with a lot of vacancies that, again, it's tough to fill right now.
Well, we got a problem too with people from foreign countries coming in here at will. And
well, that's a whole other problem. I'm all for people immigrating to our country and into Massachusetts, but I also want them to do it legally. And I think most people that are immigrants understand that they really think that we have to make sure that our borders are kept secure, and that those people who come to our country become citizens and do it the right way. And giving people, for example, again, driver's licenses, even though they're here illegally, it's just rewarding bad behavior. They already broke the law once. Why are we giving them a driver's license as a reward for that?
Exactly. And in some cases, they've been deported and come back, and they'd give them a license. They were deported because they broke the law when they were here originally. They get deported, then they come back in, and now we're going to give them a license.
I know. So again, it's all about common sense. You got to elect people at all levels of office, whether it's sending them down to Congress. I know there's a lot of good people running for office. Jeffrey Sosa Paquette, I believe, is running for Congress
yes.
in that region.
Yes, he's been on this show.
What's that?
He's been on this show.
Oh, good. Yeah, I mean, and he talks about things like human trafficking, which really gets very, very little attention. But it's important to make sure that that issue is taken care of. His husband, I believe, is someone who was trafficked early at a young age. So, it's again, having various experiences in life is important to send it to different offices, like down in Washington, D.C. I think Geoff Sosa Paquette would provide a great perspective that's not existing down there right now. I think that my background of serving in government at the state level and knowing the private sector from the work I've done is a good hybrid for being governor, because governor needs to not only make sure that state agencies are working correctly, but also try to recruit new businesses to come to Massachusetts and provide those future careers and all that new innovation that's going to make our state continue to be a leader around the country and around the world.
Right, we have about 5 minutes left, but I just wanted to ask you, of course, on our ballot, the governor and lieutenant governor are separate, so you could end up having a Democrat for a lieutenant governor, or maybe not even Leah, but
No,
the other
well,
Republican
actually,
candidate.
they don't mix it. They don't mix it from the Democrat side. So what ends up happening is people pull either a Republican ballot or a Democrat
No, I'm talking
ballot.
about in the general election.
No, but what happens is the winner of the Republican primary for lieutenant governor gets merged together with the governor. The Republican governor and lieutenant governors get merged together as a joint for the general election.
Oh,
So we won't get mixed. It
in
won't
the
be
general
mixed
election.
after
Okay,
the general.
it's been 4 years. I couldn't remember.
Yeah. No, I mean, and look, I don't. That might be a good thing. Who knows? But right now, the current way it is that Leah Allen is my running mate. I'm hoping that
Right.
people will select both Geoff Diehl and Leah Allen on the same day next Tuesday.
No, she did a great job here. She impressed me very much. Like you say, she was one of the heroes of the epidemic because she worked right through it.
And then fired when she wouldn't get vaccinated,
Yeah,
even though she
fired
knew
when
she was a nurse who
I know.
knows her best healthcare choices. And at UMass Worcester Memorial Hospital System, they fired 200 nurses who did not want to get the vaccine. Some of them had gotten COVID and had the natural immunity. It's just horrendous to think that people's careers were ruined because of that.
It's most ridiculous part
again,
of
I want to make up for it where I can, and I want to make sure that type of decision making never happens again. So I'm hoping that people will certainly give me their vote on Tuesday. And if people don't know enough about me yet, they should go to my website. My mom decided to make my life interesting, so she spelled my name Geoff with a G, Geoff Diehl is my last name. So JeoffDiehl.com is the website, and on that website I have a place where you can learn all about my platform, all the policy issues. You can look at news reports that have come out about me. You can go to a store to buy some T-shirts or hats about me if you like that. You can donate, of course, and then there's a place where people can actually click to volunteer. And what we've done is we've broken up all the volunteer activities, like making phone calls or holding signs or stuffing envelopes. We've put a button at each one of those. So whatever you like to do, you can click and be a part of the campaign team as well. The more hands involved, the better chances of winning in November.
Okay, well, best of luck to you on Tuesday. You'll know by Wednesday of next week whether you're the candidate or not.
That's right. It's getting close. And again, it's been a real honor to serve the people of Massachusetts for 8 years as a state representative. I ran against Elizabeth Warren in 2018, and even though I wasn't successful in that race, I was able to get almost 1 million votes. That was more than the Democratic nominee for governor at the time. So the fact of the matter is I have a really solid base of people that I'm operating from, and we've been able to add to that. And I've gone out, and for the last year and a half, I've campaigned across Massachusetts, trying to add to that number. And I think that the mood right now is such that people are ready for somebody who comes from the outside perspective again, and that's where I'm at. I've been working in the private sector for 4 years, and I'd like to bring my experience back to Beacon Hill and make some better decisions so that we all have a bright future and that nobody has to leave Massachusetts. They can live here affordably and reach for that American dream, whatever it is that each of us sees as that dream.
Okay, well, if you do make it through on Tuesday, can we count on you to come back on here before the general election?
You bet. In fact, I'll hopefully be able to be in person. It's just been a real crunch to try to get everywhere I need to be right now, because even though it's a fairly small state, there's 7 million people, and there's a lot of places to go. So thank you for having me on, at least by telephone. But again, we'll do better the next time, okay?
Yeah, but we'll get you on by telephone if we have to, but at least try to get you on.
Well, that sounds good. Well, Harry, thank you so much for hosting this, and my best to your wife and to the crew there that's handling the show. I really appreciate the time and the effort to make this happen.
All right. Well, thank you for calling.
All right. Take care. See you soon.
And good luck on Tuesday.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that was Geoff Diehl, a candidate for governor in the Republican primary. A lot of people have voted already. You can tomorrow you can get down to the town hall and still early vote. I think they close early tomorrow. There's a schedule on the door, but I forgot what it said for Friday. I voted today. It's out of the way. If not, you can go to the regular polling place, which is the high school, on Tuesday, and the polls will be open from 8 to 8, and I believe 8 to 8. And if you are a Republican and you're registered as a Republican, you'll get a Republican ballot. If you're registered as a Democrat, you'll get a Democrat ballot. If you're unenrolled you have to tell them which ballot you want, but it will not change your status. You don't become a Republican if you take a Republican ballot. You stay unenrolled. Forget to vote in the primary. You can't vote in both primaries, though. But you can go back. If you're unenrolled, you can pick one or the other. And hey, your duty to get out there and vote. I mean, it's so easy in Massachusetts now. You could have got a mail-in ballot. You can do the early voting. I went down there, and I was the only guy in the room, other than the two workers. It went fast. The Republican ballot's pretty easy. The only contest on there is for governor and lieutenant governor. Governor and lieutenant governor. The rest of them, there's no contest. So very easy to do. No questions on this ballot. On the next ballot, the ballot that'll come in November 8th, there will be questions as well as a town election on it. We'll be electing a selectman to replace Alicia Cannon. And I don't know who that's going to be because people still have to take out their papers and get their signatures, and they'll get on the ballot. So we'll see what happens. Geoff was going to be here live. He was scheduled. And but for about 2 or 3 weeks now, we've been scheduled. We had a confirmation. Still got a copy of it. At the last minute today, I get a call after I announced on WCRN that he would be here live. I get a call saying he can't make it, that he has and that happens in a campaign. We're down to the wire now, and they're out there trying to pick up as many votes as they can wherever they can. And so that's what happened. I mean, it was a quick change, and it kind of screws us up, but that's, you do what you got to do. And but at least he did give us a chance to call in on the phone. He gave us a half hour, and I guess that's the time it's taken him to drive between stops right now. And, he'll be out straight all weekend. And I know if you want to see him live, you probably see him at the Labor Day Parade. That's where everybody goes in Marlboro. That's a big event. So, like I said, it's a busy weekend. And this is it fell on a day after Labor Day. Tough time for a primary election, because primary elections don't draw a lot of crowds as it is. And when you have it right after Labor Day, the day after a holiday, it's not working out too well. Really having the November election the day after Thanksgiving, how many people would show up, right? It would never be scheduled that way. But they're required to have it so many days prior to the election, the general election, so that's how it fell into view. We had on Leah Allen, who is his running mate for as running as lieutenant governor from Danvers, Mass. Grew up in Peabody, and she was here for a whole hour. She was right here in the studio, and we'll be running that over the weekend, as well as this one with Geoff Diehl. So if you want to get familiar with them, get to know who they are and what's going on, here's your opportunity. Well, I got not a lot to say now. We will be back on Wednesday, starting our new season with 3 on 11 on Wednesday. And then Thursday, we'll start again with this, with About the Valley, but it's our segment called Senior Info. We'll be here with Kelly Bowl on Thursday. And then the following week, we've got guests lined up for each Thursday coming up. So we're back to normal. We're back to live shows. Summer's over. Get ready to pay the big oil bills as they're coming, let me tell you. Oh, gas went down, but oil didn't. Figure that one out. And, it costs you almost as much for oil for your oil tank to heat your house as it does for diesel fuel. And there's no fuel tax on it, so I don't understand what's going on with that. And you people who thought you were in great shape because you have natural gas, and natural gas was way down in price, well, no longer that, because it's no longer that way. And same with propane. So, I mean, we're gonna wrap it up, okay? So we'll see you Wednesday night here on 3 and 11.